Services, Donna Shalala.
Acting Commissioner Friedman. Mr. President, today you sign a hard-fought bill that in the end was approved unanimously by both houses of Congress. The FDA has saved countless lives in the 20th century. Today, we prepare it for the 21st century. I couldn't tell, I'm so... When it comes to protecting the health of Americans, the FDA has always been a step ahead in protecting the nation's food supply, in approving new drugs, and bringing new medical devices to the market. And that's why early in the administration, under the leadership of Vice President Gore, we initiated changes to make sure that all of our citizens have access to promising new drugs that are safe, effective, and arrive on time. There have been more cancer and AIDS drugs for people who need them. Drug approval times have been cut in half, miles of red tape cut. And while working to make FDA more effective, we never lost sight or compromised its fundamental mission to promote the public health, to maintain the public trust, and improve the lives of all Americans. But we're not done yet. The FDA Modernization Act of 1997 represents the bipartisan, very hard work of the administration, of exceptional members of Congress, of the pharmaceutical industry, of the medical device industry, and patients. People in my own department, like Bill Corr and Rich Tarplin and Bill Schultz and Diane Thompson and Peggy Dotzel. Our partner in OMB, Sally Katzen, Chris Jennings, Don Gibbs, so many others. Mike Friedman carried the burden of much of the testimony. Today, we re-energize the FDA with a broader constituency than it has had in a generation. This FDA reform coalition will not stop and will support appropriate resources for the agencies. We would not be here, of course, without the extraordinary leadership of the President and the Vice President. From his earliest days in Congress, the Vice President has supported science and explained science and helped to make sure that the means of science always serve the ends of better health for all Americans. And from his earliest days of reinventing government, the Vice President has been a major force in reforming and reinventing the FDA and making it more responsive to both consumers and to industry. It's my honor to introduce the Vice President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and Secretary Shalala, thank you. That quick quip about her not being able to tell whether people were standing or sitting is characteristic of what we get every single day working with her. And she is such a dynamo and such a source of creativity and leadership. We really appreciate your role in making today possible, Secretary Shalala. Thank you very much. And you acknowledge the members of your staff, and I want to, and OMB and others on the President's team, and I want to second that praise for them. And I want to pay special homage to the members of the Senate and the House who really made this possible. They worked so hard and in a very constructive and bipartisan way. Seems like with this divided government we've got, there's sort of two storylines in Washington. There's occasional squabbling and fighting, and then there are these moments of transcendent bipartisanship where some really good legislation gets written, and this is one of those times. And I want to thank Senator Jim Jeffords of Vermont, Senator Ed Kennedy of Massachusetts, and welcome his sister Eunice Shriver with us today. I want to acknowledge Senator Dan Coates of Indiana, Senator Mike DeWine of Ohio, Senator Judd Gregg of New Hampshire, and Senator Barbara Mikulski of Maryland. All of these senators have labored mightily to produce this great bill, And on the House side, I'd like to thank Congresswoman Anna Eshoo from California, Congressman Joe Barton of Texas, Congressman Richard Burr of North Carolina, and Congressman Ed Whitfield of Kentucky. I also want to acknowledge the many groups present representing the drug industry, biotech industry, medical device industry, food industry, and the many patient advocacy organizations and consumer advocacy organizations, all of whom played critical roles as well in making this legislation possible. There was a very good process of communication all through this whole legislative process. And one other person, in addition to the members of Congress who are here today, you know, Congressman John Dingell could not be with us today. I want to acknowledge him, and I'd like to recognize Kay Holcomb of Congressman Dingell's staff, who's retiring. Stand up, Kay. Stand up. We appreciate you. She's retiring after 25 years of exceptional public service, and I want to thank all of you for joining us here today to witness the President signing this important new legislation. At the dawn of the 21st century, new medical advances hold out the promise of a better and healthier life for untold millions of Americans. We're on the verge of more effective treatments for AIDS and cancer, and vaccines for crushing illnesses like hepatitis and HIV, a major source of meningitis in children. There has never been a time of greater progress or possibility in all of human history. It's very exciting. And our challenge is to give the American people access to these breakthroughs as quickly and as efficiently as we possibly can, without in any way compromising the quality and safety on which we all depend. That is where the Food and Drug Administration comes in. And there is perhaps no federal agency that is more critical to America's families. It's worth remembering that this began not during the New Deal or the New Frontier or the Great Society years, but way back during the Progressive era. And as such, it reflects a deeper, older, more basic determination to have government play an essential role in protecting our health and safety. From over-the-counter aspirin to life-saving new drugs and therapies, from cutting-edge new medical devices to simple health claims on the food we serve our families, the FDA is our guarantee of safety, quality, and effectiveness. For this reason, reforming the FDA, ensuring that it can meet the challenges of the 21st century, is both a crucial and a delicate task. I remember vividly during the transition months in late 1992 when then President-elect Clinton put special focus on FDA and the related parts of our government that play this role. And soon after taking office, we faced a food safety crisis that some will remember. And the President moved quickly to make inspection of food based on science instead of the touch and smell method that is not really utilizing the most up-to-date technology. He increased funding for food safety in his budget and in the upcoming budget, and proposed legislation strengthening the hand of FDA and also the Department of Agriculture in protecting the nation's food supply. There have been major changes there. And I'm proud to say that under President Clinton's leadership, we've taken major steps to reform FDA already, a lot of them through our Reinventing Government initiative. As a result, today's FDA is more efficient, more effective, and an even stronger guardian of the public health than 5 years ago. We have modernized and streamlined the regulation of biological products. We have dramatically reduced drug approval times. To keep up with the virtual flood of new research and innovation, the FDA approved 63% more drugs in 1996 than in 1995. The FDA has formed new partnerships with private industry to bring products to the market more quickly, to improve safety, and to save money all at the same time. In fact, the reforms have been so dramatic that I've actually had to attend meetings where the focus of discussion was how can we deal with the unanticipated consequences of the dramatic shortening of the approval time. Everybody's having to change all their assumptions. You now routinely see advertisements by pharmaceutical companies for new stock offerings that will emphasize in the print, remember folks, the FDA approval times have dropped dramatically. So everyone is adjusting to these new realities. These efforts were recognized in 1997 when the Food and Drug Administration was awarded the prestigious Innovations in Government Award by the Ford Foundation and Harvard's Kennedy School of Government for improvements in the drug approval process. It's very gratifying that this legislation gives so many of these reforms and reinventions the force of law, and it gives us a foundation for our continuing work. For our Food and Drug Agency must always keep pace with the astonishing advances in our science and medicine to protect and improve the health of our people. Well, I think it's obvious from these results that our country is very fortunate to have a president who not only understands the promise of new science and technology, but is committed heart and soul to harnessing them for the good of all Americans. This all results from President Clinton's insistence that everyone in his administration work closely with the Congress on a bipartisan basis to get these improvements. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to present the person who's helping us build a 21st century that is stronger and healthier and more prosperous than we can imagine today, President Bill Clinton.
Thank you. Look it up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. After Secretary Shalala made you all laugh, she reminded me that she has to go catch a plane. She's going on a trip to Asia, and she's winding up in Bhutan. She said, you know, some people think Bhutan's the most beautiful place in the world. And the king's there, and he's got 4 wives, and they're all sisters. And she said, wonder if he'd like 4.5. I thought the private joke was even better than the public one, so I thought I'd give credit. Let me first of all thank the Vice President and his Reinventing Government staff for the work that they have done on the FDA, and Secretary Shalala and all the people at HHS, and Sally Katzen, and the people at OMB, and folks in the White House, the industry leaders who are here. But let me especially thank the members of Congress, all those who are here, and at least 2 who are not, Congressman Bliley and Congressman Dingell, for the work that, this really astonishing work. It was a 2-year process, but this bill passed by a voice vote in both houses. And yet it is a very significant overhaul in the work of the Food and Drug Administration. It also, it seems to me, is symbolic of what we should be doing as a country. The FDA, which was created under Theodore Roosevelt, as Vice President said, is really, I think, one of the signal achievements of the progressive era. Why was it necessary? Because more and more people were moving from the farm to the city and making a living in factories, and instead of consuming the food that they raised on their own farms, they had to go down and buy the food from somebody else. And more people had access to doctors, and doctors had access to medicine that was being discovered that they couldn't know everything about. So someone needed to say, hey, this medicine's okay. We've tested it. It's okay. You can give it to your patients in Iowa or Oregon or Arizona or Alabama. And so a whole new world of possibility opened when people could move from farm to factory, and when people could have access to a doctor when they couldn't see one before. But there needed to be someone who said, here's the public interest in trying to make sure the food is safe and the drugs are safe and they do what they're supposed to do. And it's worked stunningly well, really, throughout the entire industrial era of the 20th century. Our country has continued to see its life expectancy increase and its economy grow and diversify. But when I was out there, the Vice President's right, I brought this up in our transition back in '92, because when I went across the country in 1992, everywhere I went, people were complaining, on the one hand, that they were beginning to be concerned about some food safety issues, and on the other hand, that the health and welfare of the American people was actually being undermined by a system in the FDA that at least the people who were involved in it thought was too slow and somewhat arbitrary, and not giving the American people the drug approvals and the medical device approvals in a timely fashion. So we set to work on it. We found there was an enormous amount of interest in the Congress. The Vice President's right. The FDA deserves, I think, a great deal of credit for the internal changes that have been made, that have been recognized, and particularly on the drug approvals, the speed of them. But this legislation, I think, is very, very important. And again, I say it is also symbolic of a larger mission we should be about. We're maintaining and redefining the public interest at a time when there are new challenges to food safety, which we've tried to meet partly in the Department of Agriculture and partly with some important bipartisan legislation that Congress passed about a year ago. And when we have new possibilities in both medicine and medical devices, and what we want to do is get those to people as quickly as possible and still protect the public interest. And we know now we have new options for that because of the change, again, in the underlying nature of the society, moving from the industrial age to a technology, computer, information-dominated age in which we have a lot more opportunities to do things that will speed this approval process. And on the other hand, in the food area, we know, because we've now gone from seeing people get their food from their neighbors who were farmers while they lived in the cities, that food has become more and more and more an international commodity, and we have an even higher responsibility, not only through the FDA, but generally through the government, to secure the safety of our food supply. So I think the changes we're making are very important, not only on their own merits, but because what you have done is a model for what America has to do in area after area after area. Clearly define the public interest and then change the way we pursue it, consistent with the tools and the responsibilities and the opportunities available in this time. And all of you should be very, very proud of that. Let me say that as everybody knows, this bill is the product of 3 years of hard work that involves all the people I have already mentioned. I just think it's worth pointing out that at the beginning of the process, the sides stood worlds apart. I think that is an understatement. And the fact that there was a process by which you could think through differences and build a true consensus that is bipartisan and that involves all the stakeholders, resulting in a bill. Somebody told me 2 years ago, 2 years from now, you'll be standing over at the old EOB and you'll be about to sign a bill that passed the Congress by a voice vote, and it will have more than 2 words in it, so it won't be an empty bill. It will in fact be a sweeping reform of FDA. I would have taken odds against that. And I think you should all be very, very proud of yourself. Let me just highlight a few of the bill's provisions. First, we continue working with the business community to get more drugs approved faster. We've reauthorized the Prescription Drug User Fee Act for 5 more years. It ensures that the cost of reviewing and approving drugs is shared between industry and government. Since 1992, these additional revenues have helped FDA hire some 600 more employees, cutting drug approval time in half already, and we want to do better. Second, the bill writes into law many of the reinventing government measures introduced by FDA a few years ago, reducing the requirements and simplifying the review process for new drugs and medical devices without compromising safety. And I congratulate the Vice President for all his work, particularly on this effort. Third, we will offer new hope to critically ill Americans by expanding access to drugs and therapies whose FDA approvals are still pending. Anybody who's ever had a family in this situation knows what an important part of the legislation this is. We know that for many patients, Experimental treatments represent their best, perhaps their only chance for recovery. That's why this bill writes into law current FDA policies that allow doctors and patients to use new drugs before they are formally approved. Already, thousands of AIDS, cancer, and Alzheimer's patients have found new hope, even new life, with these experimental therapies. We will also expand the database on clinical trials of drugs that fight serious illnesses so that patients can keep track of their progress. It's been said that while the century we are about to leave has been an age of physics, the 21st century will be an age of biology, perhaps yielding cures to diseases we thought incurable. We are already witnessing the medical possibilities of the future, as the Vice President said. This fall alone, the FDA has approved new drugs and treatments for everything from HIV to breast cancer, cardiovascular disease to cystic fibrosis, Parkinson's to epilepsy. The FDA has served America well. Today, with the bill I'm about to sign into law, we can ensure that it will serve America well into the 21st century, and I hope serve as a model, again, for how we can maintain our goals of pursuing the public interest and adjust our means to the possibilities and the challenges of a dramatically new era. The FDA has always set the gold standard for consumer safety. Today, it wins a gold medal for leading the way into the future. And thank you all. I'd like to ask the congressman now to join me up here so we can sign the bill. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving. Yes, this is exactly right. Those last votes. Where's Donnie? It's the way we did the bill.
Maybe it's down in the barn. The bill is done. We had you covered.
Thank you all. We're adjourned.